one of the biggest and first lessons I had. By the way, here's another, maybe I said this in the beginning. St. Paul, who says in Hebrews, encourage one another while it is still today, so that no one grows hardened by the deceit of sin. I knew Dr. Bernard Nathanson. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was a pioneer in the abortion movement. He had the first abortion clinic in New York City. He aborted not only 60,000 babies that he was responsible for, 60,000. 60. He said, we ran our abortion clinic every day of the year, including Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, you name it. We ran our clinic. He aborted 60,000 babies, including 2 of his own, his girlfriends and his wife's. He said to me, by the way, he died a Catholic. He converted to Christianity and then was baptized by Cardinal O'Connor, and he devoted the rest of his life to traveling around the world free to talk about what he had done and how sorry he was. He said to me, you see those rosaries over there? And I said, yeah. He says, you know, he says the other side laughs at you Catholics and your rosaries and your prayers and all that stuff. But he says, when we'd look out the window and we'd see these foolish people walking up and down, carrying those rosaries and praying so prayerfully, don't think that didn't have an effect on my staff and on me. So we don't know. We don't know what effect. Now, if you can't go out in front of a clinic, you can let your friends and your neighbors and your grandkids and your kids know what you believe. Even if they don't, you can still let them know that this is what you believe, because God made each and every one of us in his image and likeness. There's no such thing as an unwanted child. Maybe a surprise, maybe misplaced a little bit. No such thing as an unwanted child. Another story I had was a woman who came to me, and she was from Edina. If you don't know Edina, we used to call it the mink capital of Minnesota. It was a very wealthy area. And she said, you know, I know about your group. I'd like to speak for you. She said, do you know my story? I said, no, I don't know your story at all. And she says, well, she's on her own, and she was a working woman. She's about 26 years old. And she says, you know, I had a baby, and I placed a baby for adoption. I hugged her. I said, oh, God bless you. Thank you for doing that. And I said, is it because you're Catholic? And she says, well, I wish I could say it was, but nope. Probably didn't mean that much to me at the time. I said, was it your mother and your father who was with you? And she says, no. She says, you know, my story's kind of unusual. She says, everything was fine. I was a rich kid from Edina. I had it made. And she says, in fact, she says, but until my mother got cancer when I was in high school, and she died before I graduated. And then my kid brother got killed in a car accident. And so I'm alone by myself. I took a job, and my dad had a girlfriend, and I'm on my own in an apartment, and I got pregnant by a married man who was my boss. I said, did you think about abortion? She says, I thought of it, but I knew I couldn't do it because of my grandmother. And I said, was your grandmother there? She says, no. But when I was 15 years old, my grandma had this cabin. We loved going to Grandma's cabin. And all I could think about that day was just going out and get a suntan so I could go back to Edina High School and be the, tannest girl, So she says, the sun's coming up, and I'm sitting there looking out the window, and the deck's there, and I'm going to go lay out on the deck and get tan. And all of a sudden, Grandma comes in the room with these crazy brochures and sitting down, telling me what she wants me to know about what she's praying for. And she says, and it's all about abortion and how upset she is that the United States of America would change its laws on abortion. And I sat there trying to be polite and listening to Grandma and putting my head in my hands, and I thought, what has this got to do with me? 5 years later, I knew that had to do with my baby, because Grandma's gone, but I know she's praying. And so I had my baby, and I placed my baby for adoption because I knew that's what Grandma would want me to do. Grandma wasn't there, but Grandma saved a baby's life. I think she was part Italian because she didn't keep it to herself. And that's what we have to do, is we have to share our values and our stories and our beliefs. Because if we don't, someone else is going to get to that kid, and who knows what they're going to tell them. So we have an arsenal that we can use, as all of you have said so well, whether it's the rosary or going to Mass or praying in unison, praying together. We have a common prayer, the Our Father. We Christians have more in common than not, do we not? They can worry about the synods and the differences at some other place. We know what we're fighting about. And we need to be an army and a legion of unity together. And that's what makes us strong. And that's what makes the devil upset. So I'd just like to share some testimonies with you. St. Francis says, we have been called to heal wounds, to unite what has fallen apart, and to bring home those who have lost their way. Many who may seem to us to have been children of the devil will still become Christ's disciples. St. Francis. Now, Mother Teresa says it a different way. She says, God pays attention to our love. Not one of us is indispensable. God has the means to do all things and to do away with the work of the most capable human being. We can work until we drop. We can work excessively. If what we do is not connected to love, however, our work is useless in God's eyes. So we want to be loving. We aren't warriors where we beat people over the head. We're going to kill them with love. We are going to treat them with kindness and courtesy. A woman who has become my very dearest friend had 2 abortions, said she was a feminist, was outside of her church, was in the throes of a terrible marriage by an atheist who didn't care anything about kids or whatever. And she can't. In fact, she read one of my books about parenting. She says, if I would have known you were pro-life, I would never have gotten that book. And isn't that something? She says, I think God shielded that from my eyes until I could read it, and called for help. She's now peppered her state with billboards and all sorts of things and doing fundraisers for pro-life across America. And she's back in her church. That's the power of love and forgiveness. I had a woman who called me and she said, I need your advice. I had an abortion 50 years ago. I've never told another soul, never told another soul. She says, and now my daughter came to me and said, my granddaughter's pregnant, and my daughter's thinking of taking her to have an abortion. And when I think about my years and how I've suffered silently by myself because I had that abortion, what should I do? I said, this is it. God's calling on you. You've got to be that witness. That's what I thought, she said. Sometimes we have to do the hard truth. Sometimes. Got a letter. I am in a prison where I can't call your 1-800 number. We can only make collect calls. I had an abortion years ago and I'm suffering with the after effects. Please send me anything you have about how to deal with these feelings of shame, guilt, loss, and depression. Most of all, write me so I can talk to someone about this. Signed, Amanda. We are people of conversion and faith. We don't want anyone going to hell. We don't want anyone suffering. We really don't. We want them all on our side, don't we? And we want to keep praying. Here's another one. Where did I find it? Every billboard in Staten for Life pulls me a little further out of a dark pit and in the light. I had 2 abortions years ago, and your work restores my confidence that someone cared about me and my babies, and someone cares about my babies, and someone cares about me. Thank you, and God bless you. So whatever we can do as a team, and that we are a team, I don't care if we're, and I think it's wonderful. When I went to my priest friend, when I was in another organization, I'd been in so many organizations, pro-life organizations, and all of a sudden I just thought, we just need some signs, some big signs that tell the truth, because the media won't tell the truth. And so I went to my pastor and I said, oh, Father, I just don't know, but I just keep having this gnawing feelings that we should do some big thing. I suppose a mother of 13 thinks a little big anyways. And I said, I keep getting this idea that we should have like billboards and radio ads and something to come. I said, but you think it's nuts? Because if I put a billboard up, Planned Parenthood could bury me with all the money they have. And I said, what do you think? And he says, good idea. He said, we need to be like shrapnel, where we just spread all over and they can't dig us out. And he said, it's the truth is powerful, Mary Ann. If 1,000 people are shouting a lie, and one in their midst is telling the truth will always prevail. So I'm going to quit so that there's a few questions that you may ask, and I just want to say thank you, God bless you. You have been a wonderful, wonderful audience, and I know each and every one of you are going to carry your hearts and help spread the pro-life message. God bless you, and thank you for the privilege of being here in your beautiful Decorah. Do you have any questions? Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, we'll just take a couple of questions because I see it's almost 2 o'clock and we'll try to respect your time, and I'll stay as long as ever, but if anybody has a couple questions. Yes, sir.
First of all, I appreciate you sharing. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Regarding the statistics, I'm a little confused on 1/3 are married.
Yes.
So obviously 2/3 aren't kids out of wedlock or whatever the circumstance. How do we educate young people? You know, we believe in abstinence and all that, but it's difficult in this culture that we're living in. Colleges are co-ed dorms and it's crazy. So I hope you address that.
Okay, how can we address those who are even married and would be considering abortion? Again, it's probably the same thing for those that aren't married, and that is to offer the truth. To offer the truth. And, you know, I don't know, it could be panic on the part of the, you know, my experience with those who are married is that one in the relationship wants the abortion and one does not. Usually those are very, very troubled marriages, you know. I frankly would send them to either Retrovi or there's a marriage encounter, but usually something like that. There's another group, if you've ever heard of Retrovi for troubled marriages. You know, sometimes things like that, if they would listen to you, you know. I'm trying to think. I'll just tell you one story. This isn't about a married person, but I got a call from a man in Colorado one time who said, I don't know what to do. He said, I was with this girl. I don't know whatever I saw in her in the first place, but he says, we went together for a little while now. She told me she's pregnant, and she's going to get an abortion. And he said, I just feel terrible. He says, you know, I just hate to have a kid lose his life because I'm not interested in this girl anymore. And he says, but I told her, when she told me she was pregnant, I said, well, don't have an abortion because it would end the baby's life or kill the baby. And she was so mad at me, she slammed the door in my face. And he says, what should I do? And I said, what's your name? And he says, Don. I said, you know, Don, when a woman is first pregnant, she isn't thinking of a baby. She's thinking of herself and what change is going to happen to her and how scared she is and how panicked she is, especially if she's going to be alone and you're not going to be with her because you found out that you're not. Oh, I don't want to be with her. He says, I don't know what I want to be with her. So I says, here's the deal, Don. She's only thinking of herself. If we could let her know that this abortion is going to affect her for the rest of her life, physically, it could be the only baby she ever has. It could hurt her physically so that she'll have trouble having other babies or keeping full-term babies. Sometimes you can carry them, but they lose them as, it's got to do with our muscular structure. Long story, but anyways, it's not healthy for a young virgin woman to have an abortion. And so I said, Don, I'm going to give you an idea. Just try this and see if it works. Go back to her house. He said, oh, I don't know. I said, go back to her, but I want you to go to the store and get a big bouquet of flowers and get a big box of candy. And I want you to go over to her house, knock on the door, tell her you're sorry. You want her to know that you are really concerned about what this is going to do to her, and you're going to stick by her. But number one, Don, are you going to stick by her? He said, yeah, I would. I said, what if she has to go to all these classes? Would you stick by her? Yeah, I would. I said, what if she makes an adoption plan? Would you stick by her? If she stays with the baby, would you stick by her? Oh, yeah, I guess I would. I won't marry her. I don't want to marry her. I said, that's fine. But you would at least help her through that and support her. Yes, I would. I said, then you go bring her the flowers and the candy and you tell her that you want to sit down with her because you're very concerned. At least ask her if she'll give herself 24 hours. That's all. Ask her 24 hours. And you will go with her to a confidential counseling where she can at least know what it will do to her body and herself so she can consider all the alternatives before she has the abortion. Will you do that, Don? Yes, I will. Okay, I figure, well, I do that all the time. He doesn't. Usually we don't hear from these people, again, because they go to the clinic we send them to, or they don't, and we don't hear from them. About 2 months later, the gal in my office comes running and she says, there's a guy that's got to talk to you from Colorado. I said, I don't think I know anybody. Well, he says his name is Don. I still don't know who that is. I get on the phone, he says, remember me? I said, well, no, I don't really. Tell me your story. He says, well, I'm the one that told you that my girlfriend slammed the door in my face because I said she shouldn't have the abortion. And I said, oh, Don, yeah, how did that go? How did you do? And he says, guess what? It worked. I said, what do you mean? He says, I didn't mention the baby like you said. I just talked to her about, I'll go with you, I'll support you, I'll help you. And I said, did you go with her? He said, yes, I did. And he says, I did give her the candy and the flowers too. That didn't hurt any. And I said, well, how's it going? He says, well, I still don't like her. I still don't know what I ever saw in her. I still don't want to marry her. But we're going to see this through, and she's going to have that baby. So the difference was, Don addressed her as a woman and as a mother who was petrified and scared. And sometimes even these married couples are so scared that it's going to change their way of life. That's why I mentioned don't wait, have a baby quick before you figure out that you're going to have to give up your, hiking and biking and fitness class for a week or whatever, whatever. So does that answer kind of maybe? It is. It's shocking to know married people will have an abortion, but I knew one personally. It was one of the saddest days because she told me that 2 days before Christmas I was making chocolate chip cookies for my kids, and she called me back and thanked me for all my counseling and said she was still going to go through with the abortion. It just broke my heart. It was a terrible Christmas for me. I still pray for the girl because I just can't help but think what happened to that marriage, and not to mention the baby and to her psyche as well. We've had several women who were on the brink of suicide who've called for help. These women do not, and men too. I had a man who called, he said, it's Christmas time. I ran across your radio ad when I was flipping channels and happened to hear it on Christian radio station. He said, I paid for a couple of abortions 10 years ago, and I feel like I don't have the right to walk into a church since then. So I haven't set my foot inside a church, but I'm getting older. And I'm thinking something someday is going to be the end, and I don't want to meet my maker. I need to get back to church, but I don't feel right about it. So we got to talking, and I congratulated him on being such a good guy and conscientious. And there are men's support groups for men who've been through an abortion experience. So I was talking to him about that, and he says, I didn't just pay for the abortions. I pushed and pushed and pushed until she got them. 2 abortions. So I told him about the support group, and he went back to his church. Men suffer too, in a different way. They have consciences too. It's terrible what we've done to eliminate the man, because they're trying to break down the family, by the way, and they're starting in our schools by trying to break down the family unit and separate the men from the most beautiful of decisions, and that is having a child together. That's a product of love, even if it was just for a second. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
How much do pro-life billboards cost, and do you get pushback?
Oh, we get pushback. In fact, I was going to tell you about it. This is our 34th year. We've had nothing but good relations with most billboard companies. Some won't deal with us at all. Some blacklist us. But most billboard companies, they've been very good to us. But I always tell them, I want to pay. I'm not asking for anything free. Because if I ask for something free, Planned Parenthood could come in and say, you gave them that for free. I want to pay, but then I'll tell you the truth. I'm a mom of a big family, and I've never paid full price for anything, so I'm not starting now. So give me your best deal, and then I tell them what I'll do to get a best deal out of them. Billboards range in price anywhere from $650 to over $3,500. They can go as high as $10,000, $20,000. Believe it or not, we actually had ads on Times Square for a while, just before the pandemic hit. What can I say? Thanks to some special donors that made it possible. So for about 30-some years, it was very rare we had any defaced or problems with any of the billboards. People loved them. Even I had several people when we first started putting babies' faces on the billboards. When we first started, we couldn't afford anything. But then we started putting babies' faces on the billboards, and that really changed the number of calls we got to our hotline. It was like unbelievable, because people could identify. They'd look at this sweet baby's face, and it helped them think backwards. Just think, they had a heartbeat at 18 days. They had fingerprints at 9 weeks. I had a pro-abortion woman call me from Planned Parenthood. She says, "You people are so sneaky. Now you've really done it, putting babies on billboards. That's the sneakiest thing." I said, "Yeah, isn't it great?" I said, "It works because people start realizing who and what we're really talking about here." So 650 in a rural area, and that doesn't count the graphic artwork we have to pay for. Sometimes we have to pay for the photography for the baby. Here's a couple of our little, these are my 2 grandbabies. And, so we've had wonderful luck until this year, when the Supreme Court decision was struck down last year by this wonderful new Supreme Court that we have. As I said, it was like a hornet's nest that happened. And now we're getting billboards defaced all over. I think we have a dozen just in Pittsburgh alone that are defaced, and they're not just defaced, spray painted. Some of that, this is one. I brought it, just one as an example. But if you look on our face page, you'll see a lot of them. This one says it was protect the babies, and they put aborting children is cool. Some, they've blackened out the eyes, they've written or kill the babies is another slogan they have. So as I say, if you think for 1 minute this isn't diabolical, no, these people are serious. They really think that nature or animals or universe or whatever is more important than human life. So we have, please pray when you see the billboards, the next time you see a billboard or hear a radio ad, that the next person that sees it, that needs help, will call our number, for help. And then pray for the companies that, so far the companies have been pretty good to us. Now I have to ask for billboards that are in low, not so low to the ground, but higher. We have a guy, I kept getting emails from Greenfield or Greenwood, Indiana. I can't remember if it's either Greenwood or Greenfield. And they emailed, say, "Please get rid of this billboard, it's all defaced." And they threw red paint all over the baby. So the slogan is kind of, and then they blacked out our name, Prolife Across America. But the red paint all over the baby. And so I called the billboard company, I tracked down where it was, and it was on a farmer's land in Greenwood, Indiana. And so finally Dave of our office called the farmer and said, "We really like to, we'll send you a new ad free if you will please take that down." He says, "I left it up there because I want everyone to see just how bad the other side is." So we have to pray for our opponents. It's a sick way of thinking that killing babies in the United States of America is a good thing to do. Killing the babies in any country is an awful thing to do. They're God's creation. God is not going to allow this country or any country to get by with this without something terrible happening to our nation. So we have to rise up. We are free. We have a chance to do it. Yes, sir.
I just want to say, I think it's interesting, it's kind of an oxymoron, if you will, when a woman is murdered or she's in an accident involving a drunk driver and killed, and they find out she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh, that becomes a double homicide. And even pro-abortion people would turn around and read the headlines and say, "Oh yeah, that perpetrator should get double." But then, we find that in our laws, in our system, that's what we should do, considering that, the child could be 2 weeks old.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yet we think that that's okay to persecute, prosecute, a murderer or a drunk driver, but it's just, we turn a blind eye to everything else.
Absolutely. In Minnesota, we have that law to protect, and yet, who were the ones that fought against it? Pro-abortionists, because that would recognize the human life before birth. Very sad. Yes, one more.
A lot of this, I think, has to do with Satanism, because there's a lot of Satan worshipers, and they offer these babies as sacrifices to the devil.
True.
There's more of that going on.
Than we know. That's true. We're talking about Satanism, and that's why we need prayer and fasting, and we need to stick together. And that's why all of you here in Decorah are so beautiful, because you are sticking together. And God bless you. Thank you for the privilege of being here today. Thank you.